brakeman is responsible for aligning the tracks so that the trains can move safely. Here in the roundhouse, that means aligning the track on the bridge with the track on the yard. And there's a 2-inch gap there that he has to roll the train across. What we do is look at the inside edge of the rail and line that up straight. And that looks like I got a pretty good alignment, so I could lock it down and turn the power off and then bring the engine onto the turntable. Generally, they put it toward the center to balance the weight a little better. And when this was operating for inspections, the workers in the empty bays would hold up a sign with the number of the engine they're ready to start on. Each engine would have a sheet that had all of the inspection requirements plus any problems that were reported from the last run. And that's what they had to check off on to complete the inspection here in the roundhouse. When they were ready to move one in, if it wasn't the one that was coming in on the turntable at that time, they would park it up on holding tracks that were all around this upper side of the turntable. We've removed those so we'll have a parking lot. But they would get one from there to put in for them to get started on. Then it would, every time it moved from one bay to another bay to another bay, it had to come back to the turntable from each bay to move into a new one. The first 8 bays here had pits between the rails, and that's where they did the wheel and undercarriage work. They're still open under the 3 steam. If you want to see what it's like, you can just look under there. Then they had an area where they had pipe fitting tools for the flue work. The welding machines were there so they could do the patch-ups and reinforcings were necessary for that. Then there was an area where they had scaffolding and ladders. They could go up on the top of the engine and do the work up there without having to crawl up on the hot engine and maybe get burned or injured falling. So by the time it made 3 or 4 different stops back to the turntable each time, it was a half a day. Then they come back to the turntable for their last stop and go down this last track here at the end of the roundhouse or the one right beside the water spout there. The first stop was right there at the water spout. The big black thing with the arm out over the track is where they would fill the engine with water. That spout does still work. On down those tracks was a coal chute. It was a double arch coal chute that they could have 2 at a time going through and dump about 8 to 10 tons of coal in the tender. Once it had water and coal, it was fueled up and ready to go. It would go back out to the freight yard, which was out behind the roundhouse here, ran almost the entire length of the shops and yard itself. And that's where they left the cars when they first pulled in. They were maintained and serviced out there. They were switched, and the cars going to local businesses were pulled out and delivered. The ones from local businesses going north or south would have been put in the train headed whichever direction. Then the train engine got back out there, it hooked up and was ready to go. We do have a western branch that takes off the main line here in Salisbury and goes west to Asheville, and it goes into Biltmore Village. So it was a busy place around here. In the 20s and 30s, over 3,000 people worked here. It ran 24/7. It was a very busy industrial complex. It was dirty, noisy, smoky, loud. So it was a typical industrial building and complex. It was the largest employer in the county until it closed down in 1963. In 53, they stopped running steam and switched totally to diesel. You'll look at the inside the roundhouse as you walk through. These last 10 bays were adapted to service the diesels. You'll notice that it changes from concrete flooring to wooden flooring. The wooden platforms were added for the diesels so that they could do the wheel work on the lower level and go into the cab level from the platform. And they used that for about 10 years until they totally closed this down. Okay, any questions about anything?
Were there passengers while if the train was making one large trip from Atlanta to Washington or something, would there be passengers waiting while the train was being checked up on? And if so,
No, the passenger trains never came into this yard area.
okay.
The engines that pulled the passenger trains were ferried about 2 miles south to the Salisbury Depot, and they switched out the engines down there. And it probably didn't take more than 20-30 minutes to switch engines. They would unhook one, pull it away, back the new one in, hook it up, and then it would be ready to proceed on. So they did not delay passenger traffic.
Okay. Thank you.
Good question.
The same thing is still done in Washington, D.C.
Oh yeah.
For the Amtrak trains.
Yeah,
They switch from diesel to electric.
right.
Um,
They still have the same kind of dimensions for the rails,
Yeah.
but you're right. In the northern area, there's more electric. They run the diesels here in the south, and when you head out west and around Chicago, it depends. There's different lines have a little bit different things. So, you know, when you pull into the larger cities, especially the end of the lines, there are switches that are made.
Yeah.
Up with all the cars, all the engines, where they are, what tracks they're on, how long they've been running, who's in charge for what. So it's all on computer now. So it's not uncommon for us to see some BNSF or some Pacific engines over here, and just like they see Norfolk and Western engines in California. So all of that's done on computer now, but prior to the 80s or thereabouts, most of the time the engine stayed on the southern tracks, just like Pennsylvania stayed on Pennsylvania tracks and all of that. They switched out everything at the terminals. But rails still, freight trains especially, are still very much a part of our transportation system. Okay, other questions?
It's my brother's birthday.
Is what?
It's a statement.
It's his brother's birthday.
Oh, we're giving him a ride, especially for his birthday. Good? All right, let's move on around. Then you can walk through the roundhouse if you haven't. They will be bringing the train that ran today back in a little while. They've already headed that way to park it, I think. So they'll let the last people off, then they'll come back down. They'll pull it up on one of these tracks to park it. They probably will not take the engine off because it runs again tomorrow.
Which trains went to the Barber Junction?
Yeah, that's the one
Okay.
that was running today, the 1860.
I mean before, when Barber Junction was a normal train station.
Okay, Barber Junction was a little place about 25 miles west of here where the Winston-Salem southbound and the southern track that goes to Asheville cross.
Yeah.
And it was out in the country, but that's where the people in the western part of Rowan County caught the train. And they could go to Asheville or Statesville or come into Salisbury out there. And about 1981 or 2, no, it wasn't that late, it was in the 90s. The farm where the little station was located, the fella said, it's just sitting out here falling in, if y'all want it, come get it. So we went out and got the little train station and brought it here. It was built in 1899. We refurbished it and are using that building for our ticket center. So it is an old station, genuinely used as a station until they cut passenger traffic to the west.
Where was it before? Was it here?
No.
It was at Barber Junction.
Where was Barber Junction?
Yeah,
What's that
we
from?
moved it from Barber Junction to here.
Yes.
We still call it Barber Junction.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
It might be just a place.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we'll move on around and then you can look at some of the.
So we're gonna go to the car, honey. I'll meet you.
I'll walk over to the
Here we
little
go.
shop.
Yeah.
But first I'm gonna be right there.
And you can spend as much time as you want looking at the museum. But we're gonna get some lunch.
Yeah, then I'll
Maybe
be
you
able
want
to
to use something if you want.
at the little choo-choo shop.
Well, there's a hot dog place. I think it's stuff. Okay. Get back.
up on the sidewalk.
Yeah.